Please be upstanding if you are able for the Speaker of the London Borough of Hackney, please.
First of all, I would like to apologise slightly as my voice is failing me, which is slightly ironic as the Speaker of Hackney. But I'm going to be doing my best this evening and hoping it stays for the next few hours. I would like to welcome you all to this evening's Council Chamber. I note that we have a number of residents who are present in the chamber to ask questions of the Council, and I am glad that you've exercised your right to participate in this public meeting. Welcome to you all. A reminder that this meeting is being live streamed, so I would also like to welcome those watching online. Male and female prayer rooms are available on the ground floor in rooms 58 and 63. If you've not signed in, please do so. And similarly, please sign out if you leave the meeting before its conclusion. This will assist in accurately recording attendance for this meeting and for health and safety purposes. If you have not already done so, please ensure that your mobile phones are switched to silence. In order to efficiently transact the business in the agenda, please ensure that all questions and comments are directed through me and only when invited to do so. Please be succinct in your contributions and ensure that you use your microphones when addressing the chamber. We move to agenda item 1, apologies for absence. Apologies for absence have been received from Councillors Billington, Etty, Garcia, Moema, Maxwell, Oxenlanke and Ross. I've received apologies for lateness from no councillors, I don't think. Okay. Councillor Adams, are there any other apologies from Labour Group? Okay, thank you.
Councillor Lufkin, apologies from Councillor Lufkin.
Sorry, apologies. Could you state who was going to be absent again from Labour Group?
Councillor Lufkin.
Previous one. Sorry, did you get? Oh, it's same. Okay, apologies. Councillor Steinberger, are there any other apologies from the Conservative Group? None, thank you. Move to agenda item 2. I'd like to start this section of the meeting by quoting Jennifer Nadell, the founder of Compassion in Politics. Compassion has at its heart a recognition of the sanctity of all human life. It asks that we seek to understand, comfort, and befriend and acknowledge that the journey to peace begins with each one of us. As Speaker of Hackney, I am mindful that this has been an incredibly difficult few weeks for us as a community, and there has been an appalling rise nationally in anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, which in such a diverse borough as ours grieves us all. With that in mind, I would like to ask those present to stand, if you are able, and join me in a minute's silence to remember the innocent victims of the devastating events in Israel and Palestine, and for those in the borough who have been impacted by these tragic events. Thank you. Thank you. Please be seated. It's also been an incredibly varied and diverse few weeks in the Speaker's diary. In the parlour, we have held events to mark Adoption Week, National Fertility Week, and a very lovely evening event with the local Women's Institute. There have been numerous school trips and citizenship ceremonies and the wonderful 1984 play, which has fundraised for the Speaker's charities. Two of the other main events have been, firstly, We See You, our neurodiverse art event by local schools and our fantastic SEN community. Some amazing artwork was showcased alongside an extract from a fantastic new play, In Hiding, about autism within the Black community. It was a powerful event that really did highlight some of the creative and vibrant work of this community in Hackney. The second was our Democracy Week event, which saw over 100 children involved with debates and listening to panel discussions in the chamber around political engagement. Again, it was a fantastic event which highlighted both our primary and secondary schools' engagement with this issue, and which I left feeling far more hopeful about the future politicians in our midst. We have some great upcoming events, carol singing, the menorah lighting, as well as the pantomime trip and the Christmas Cheesemas quiz, which I hope to see many of you attend. Thank you as always for all the council officers, front of house, and of course Jane Ware, who makes this role so much easier. We now move to agenda item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. Are the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 27th of September agreed as true and accurate recording of proceedings? Councillor Steinberger.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wanted to point out two things. One of the things on page 25, I didn't mention anything about the subcommittee. It was about generally planning how they dealt with the application. So I want that to be rectified. And obviously if it can be clearer, because it was dealt very badly, the whole application. And what the inspector said was damaging. And also on 8.8, I thank the chief executive, the interim, but I also thank Jackie Molan. I think it's very important in these times that these type of things get minuted, because officers take new jobs, not easy, and I think they should be recognized for the work they do. Thank you.
Thank you. That's been noted and very helpful. So can we agree the minutes of the previous meeting with the amendments? Thank you. Agenda item 4, declarations of interest. Members are to note the guidance on declaring interests as set out in the agenda. Are there any declarations of interest relating to any item on the agenda? If so, could members please declare it now? Councillor Binny Lovett.
Just to declare, I'm a member of Adblock Hackney, and that relates to item 13B on the agenda.
Thank you. Any other declarations of interest? No, thank you. Agenda item 5, Mayor for Hackney by-election results, November 2023. Council has before it a report of the returning officer and interim chief executive setting out the results of the recent mayoral election results. Can I ask the council to note the election results as set out at Appendix 1 of the report? I would also like to officially extend my congratulations to Mayor Caroline Woodley. Would any members like to make any comments? Councillor Steinberger.
Just a quick comment, because obviously I went into the deep end and I stood for the Conservatives. And I just wanted to say it was very nice from all candidates, the way they behaved, and it was a very interesting, and I want to congratulate the mayor who actually won. So I look forward to working with you. And it was a very interesting time. And again, thank the officers for the work they've done in the election. Thank you.
Thank you. If no other comments, you'd like to make a comment. Thank you, Councillor Bramble.
Yes, just to congratulate my colleague, Mayor Woodley again, and just to welcome you into the chamber as your first time as mayor. And it's been a pleasure to be on the campaign trail with you and on the doorstep and see you interact with our residents and really willing to engage and listen, but also just the excitement and the interaction of the residents that really know you, and just confirming that you are part of the community. And it's really good to see you here in your role, and wishing you well.
Thank you. Any other comments? If not, I would like to take this time to acknowledge the other candidates who ran in the mayoral elections, and also to echo what Councillor Steinberger said, that it was a well-run race. So thank you very much. Agenda item 6, questions from members of the public. Questions from members of the public appear in the supplementary agenda. A reminder that the Council's constitution provides for a maximum of 30 minutes for public questions. Any questions that have not been asked at the end of the 30-minute period will receive a written response, which will be recorded in the minutes. I'll prioritise those who are in the chamber this evening, followed by those who have requested that the response to the question be read out in their absence. If you are present in the chamber, please come up to the podium where your name is called. Anyone who's not present in the chamber will receive a written response to their question, which will be included in the minutes of this meeting. Once you've received your response, you will have the opportunity to ask a supplementary question, and any supplementary question must arise directly out of the original question or the reply, and must not be a speech or statement. Is Miss Antoinette Ferdinand present? Welcome. Please come and ask your question.
Hello. Why are new developments not prioritising social and affordable housing? Developments of 58 flats, like the Laundry building on Mayor Street, should not be exempt.
Thank you for your question. This matter sits within the portfolio of Deputy Mayor Nicholson as Cabinet Member for Delivery, Inclusive Economy and Regeneration. Deputy Mayor Nicholson, you have 5 minutes and you may respond.
Great. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Antoinette, and nice to meet you, for your question this evening. And Antoinette, I think if I may just start by saying that this Labour administration, led by Mayor Woodling, is committed to delivering affordable homes in our borough for residents, and that has not changed. That has been the case now for some years, and policy is very, very, very firmly committed to delivering those affordable homes. Now, you mentioned the Laundry building, this development that's happening, just for the benefit of members in the chamber. Antoinette, it's a building just between Mayor Street and Mentmore Terrace, and it is actually a building located in a priority office area. Now, that's a bit of planning jargon, I appreciate that, but basically what it means is that this is an area of employment in our borough. There is approximately 6% of the land in the borough that falls under this category, or categories similar to this, where workspace is prioritised over residential space. Very important, because alongside our commitment in policy to delivering affordable homes for Hackney residents is also our commitment to delivering sustainable development, delivering good growth that supports residents, not just to live, but to work and play as well. And the area where the Laundry building is one of those areas of employment growth. So over the last 2 years, around nearly 5,000 square meters of affordable workspace has been delivered. And this is what happens in such areas, is that the affordable housing contribution is not the priority. The priority is affordable workspace provision. And it is the workspace provision that comes forward. And you see this in other parts of the borough. Shoreditch, for example, is a good example. But one of these other areas is the area that you're referring to. So, in regards to where we go, it doesn't stop any developer bringing forward residential units in such an area. But the priority in planning policy is for employment use. It is for workspace use. And therefore, all I'm just sort of trying to explain here in a very kind of peculiar and very kind of protracted way is that the particular example that you're talking about is absolutely right, what you're saying. There are 58 residential units, but that is on top of over 4,000 square meters of employment space, which is also being delivered by the same development on the same site. And that applies to all of the development in that particular part of the borough just down the road from this town hall. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Ms. Ferdinandez, do you have a supplementary question?
I'm going to say no. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Nicholson. Apologies. Is Miss Louisa Hillwood present in the chamber? Thank you. Welcome, Miss Hillwood. Please ask your question.
Hi, thank you. My name is Louisa Hillwood. I'm here representing the Plant-Based Council's campaign. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak today. So in October...
Apologies.
in
Can I just ask
2022
the banners be removed? Thank you very much. We will be listening to the question and the answer. Thank you.
In October 2022, I asked whether Hackney Council would switch to fully plant-based catering in internal meetings and events to address food-related emissions. Could the Cabinet Member, Councillor Caban, please provide an update on this? And if councillors still have concerns, will they meet with me to discuss it further?
Thank you. Councillor Coburn, will you please respond? You have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Can I firstly also just take this opportunity to echo your words and congratulate my good friend, Mayor Woodley, on her election. A resounding victory for Hackney Labour and a massive reality check for those who are across the chamber today. And what we did see in that election, which we didn't speak about, was that Hackney chose hope over fear in what my time as a councillor for 10 years was one of the most disgusting campaigns, and I think it should be called out for what it was. I think turning to the question by Louise, while Hackney Council has a commitment to try to move towards a plant-based treaty, I think what's really important to recognise is the diversity of our borough. And Hackney is, you know, most people will know in this room, is a very diverse borough. It's got one of the largest Turkish-speaking communities in our borough. It's got one of the biggest Haredi Jewish communities in the Western world in our borough. We've got a huge Vietnamese community, a massive Black African Caribbean community. And as such, and the reason why I'm talking about these is because as part of that is we've got to take these communities on a journey on how we tackle the climate emergency. And it's about how do we work with them to make sure that we can help support them in that transition. And that's what our climate action plan is about. The climate action plan sets out how we're going to reach net zero by 2030. It sets out 5 different thematic areas, one of them being consumption and how we could reduce emissions in that area. But it's really important that we don't fall into the trap in terms of telling our residents how they should live our life. But also, as you can see in this chamber here today, it's a very, very diverse group of members here. And we have to recognise that transition and not sort of fall into that trap of telling them how they should be living their lives. I think what's really important is to note what we have done in this space and what we have been doing and what our ambitions are towards the shift towards 2030. And one of the things, Madam Speaker, that you'll remember is in the May AGM where you were brought in as the new speaker, we actually had 50% plant-based sort of catering, but also we had fish and meat. And what we saw was that carbon emissions from that day alone was 50% less than in previous years as well. So we have to recognise the good steps that we are taking in relation to that. One of the other things that we have been doing is our sustainability and climate team has been leading on a London-wide campaign called Eat Like a Londoner. And this is a collaboration that we have, I believe, with 27 other boroughs, and the initiative is supported by a crowd-funded budget of £400,000, and it's designed to reduce food waste and promote more plant-based with further promotions planned for 2024. Look, in summary, I think whilst we are supportive towards the shift towards a more plant-based sort of diet, going back to earlier what I said, I think we have to recognise why the diversity in our borough and that shift towards it. Because often, Louise, what I often get as a councillor is, I think we've really got to be sensitive to this, is we've got to understand that the climate injustice that we do have across the globe, not just here in Hackney, is not caused by individual people, it's caused by the fossil fuel industries, and we've got to help tackle some of the injustices in those areas. So as such, it would be wrong of us to be expecting people to be continuously making sacrifices on that transition to net zero. And that's why, if you look at our climate action plan, Hackney Labour's Green New Deal, £61 million investment into what we're doing around community energy. This week, I was just joined by Mayor Woodley and lots of other colleagues across as well, how we're supporting our transition to net zero and reducing the emissions from our buildings, but also what we're doing around helping support businesses on that transition too. So what we, in summary, to your question, we will work towards it, but we're not going to be forcing our residents to move towards a plant-based treaty. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms Hillwood, do you have a supplementary question?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out I'm actually not representing plant-based treaty. I'm from plant-based councils, and I completely understand your point about not wanting to force residents into anything. But the council does need to lead the way, and if there was a report in 2021, a Re-London report, if Londoners reduced their meat intake by 70%, it would cut London's consumption-based emissions by 20%.
Ms Hillwood, can you put it in a question?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
Of course. So, yeah, and in terms of, oh, sorry, I keep going to want to respond to your point. And my question was, you still obviously have a lot of concerns. Will you meet with me, or is there a environmental committee that I can come and speak to discuss these further? Because we obviously don't have time to do it right now.
Thank you.
Just to respond, I mean, I think we very much welcome your input into our climate action plan and obviously our plans around how we can reduce consumption emissions. And I know that we've been corresponding actually with Councillor Kennedy in the room as well, so it's good to put a face to a name. I think, look, we totally agree with you that we've got to reduce our consumption emissions, and that's why the climate action plan sets out those 5 different thematic areas. You know, we're looking at our buildings, we're looking at environmental policy, what we're doing around transport emissions, and the very radical, bold agenda that we have in that area, specifically consumption and adaptation as well. And what we want to do, Louise, is really make sure that we have a process in which how we can make sure that, you know, we take people along with us on that journey, and really recognise some of the challenges that some of the communities will face in that transition as we move there. But look, more than happy to meet with you. There are lots of different functions of the councils that you can be involved with to get your voice across. We obviously had the Climate Assembly, where it was an opportunity for residents to come in and submit their views as we developed the Climate Action Plan. We obviously had the consultation that went out subsequently from that Climate Assembly, and obviously residents submitted their views to that as well, and I believe you were there as well. So we want to continue to have that engagement with you. I'm happy to meet you personally. I'm happy to correspond with you if you need any information, and I'm sure that Councillor Kennedy is also happy to do that too, and we're very much looking forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for attending this evening, Ms Hillwood. I understand that Dr Noah Berkstead-Breen, who submitted a question at 6.3, is unable to be here this evening and has requested a written response. Those who submitted questions which appear at 6.4, 6.5, 6.6 and 6.8 have also stated that they are unable to be here this evening and have requested that the response be read in their absence. I will come to this later if time permits. Is Miss Laura Pascal present in the chamber? And if so, can you ask your question?
Thank you. I'm delighted to have just been appointed as a public governor at Homerton. And the first thing I saw in doing some research about it was something called the Tree of Life project that I understand is part of a place-based partnership. I'd be keen to hear a bit more about it because it sounds very, very interesting.
Fantastic, thank you. Councillor Kennedy, will you please respond? And you have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Laura, for the question. First of all, congratulations on your appointment as a public governor. Laura is a great community activist. You will make a fabulous governor and a very hard-working one as well. Thank you. So the Tree of Life, Madam Speaker, it's a brilliant talking therapy approach that was first developed actually in Zimbabwe, and it aims to respond to mental health issues in contexts where traditional therapy itself may not be culturally resonant. In a nutshell, it's like rather than starting from the "there's something wrong with you" approach, it starts from "let's look at your strengths" approach. So it reframes the culture from which you come as a strength. It's been recognized around the world as a really great new approach to mental health problems. And when we looked back in our own system at the work we were already doing, we knew from our own needs assessments, so that's the work that Deputy Mayor Bramble has led on in improving outcomes for our young black children, and indeed from the asks of those children themselves in the Young Futures Commission, that our system here in City and Hackney and wider in North East London struggles to deliver adequate mental health support to our young African and Caribbean heritage children. As you may know, Laura, the health system has undergone a major rearrangement recently, and we in Hackney, we're now part of the North East London ICS, or Integrated Care System, and that's divided into 7 place-based partnerships. Those are partnerships that sit at the borough level. So in the place-based partnership, where actually the lead is Louise Ashley, who is the CEO of the Homerton, where you've just become a public governor, they decided to respond to those needs that had been identified by the Young Futures Commission and by the work of Deputy Mayor Bramble that I referred to earlier, that the best way of responding to that problem was by adapting that Tree of Life project to here for City and Hackney. So it was a partnership between the Hackney Council for Voluntary Services, HCVS, and the NHS mental health teams who work in our local secondary schools. And it was led by CAMS, that's the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Service here in City and Hackney. And their own Tree of Life model was pioneered in local schools as an African and Caribbean heritage peer-led model. So the aim of this programme, therefore, was to give space to young people from African, Caribbean and mixed heritage backgrounds to believe in their own abilities, to believe in themselves, to acknowledge their dreams, and to talk with peers about their own difficult experiences in a safe environment. It's been delivered by youth leaders from similar cultural backgrounds who've been trained by Nkazele Nkube. Is that right, Susan? Yeah, roughly. I have pronunciation lessons. Nkazelo developed the Tree of Life project herself in Zimbabwe. These youth leaders are then supported by educational mental health practitioners in our schools. And the project has engaged 13 local secondary schools in the first 2 years of delivery and has seen more than 400 young people benefiting from this offer. It recently received an award from the Health Service Journal. Their award is a bit of a mouthful. It was an award for innovation and improvement in reducing healthcare inequalities. But nonetheless, they're very sought after HSJ awards. Just the shortlisted organisations run to 10, 12 in each category. The judges described the project as an example of a unique approach that is going against the grain to achieve real outcomes through a responsive and flexible way of working. The project is built of respect, collaboration and understanding, and it has potential to be spread and shared so that other communities can learn from this work. Given that it is the declared aim of the new integration arrangements in the integrated care system, Madam Speaker, to drive down inequalities, it's really great to see that this is being done with brilliant projects like the Tree of Life.
Thank you so much. Ms. Pascal, do you have a supplementary question?
I do. I'd like to pick up on the point about the new ICS arrangements, and the East London Foundation Trust, I understand, had previously, outstanding services, and I'm intrigued to know how the new partnership arrangements will support that to improve further, and what the council's role in that will be.
Oh, wow, okay. How long have I got, Madam?
Probably not enough time, but 2 minutes.
So look, the simplest way of talking about this and thinking about an ICS is that the whole system under a new Care Act that came in about 3 years ago was asked to move from a system of competition to a system of collaboration, particularly collaboration between local authorities and the various NHS bodies. So bodies like the East London Foundation Trust, which is a mental health trust, are being asked to work with our urgals and local authorities. And instead of bidding, say, against each other, for example, for who runs the community health giving part of the system, they actually work together to find out where in the system it best sits, and to organise amongst themselves as to which specific organisation will deliver it better. A cynic, and I'm a bit cynical about this, would say that part of the government drive for this was simply to try and reduce back office spend, because we used at borough level, every borough in the country, to have a CCG, a clinical commissioning group. Those were amalgamated, sometimes 7, 10, 12 at a time, into the ICSs, the integrated care systems. So instead of a CCG in each of the just over 300 boroughs in England and Wales, you've now got just 42 ICSs in England and Wales. And the idea is that those back office functions will have shrunk down. Of course, that meant for us, for example, at City and Hackney, I'm thinking of one particular practitioner who I don't want to name, but a very good practitioner in our primary care practice who is no longer with us.
Please be drawing to conclusion, sorry.
And so there are problems as well as opportunities in the integrated care systems. I did a very good presentation, though I say it myself, to Health in Hackney about the whole changes, and that's on record about 9 months ago. Cheers.
Thank you. That was a very impressive 2 minutes. Thank you, Ms. Pascal, for attending this evening. Is Ms. Ifat Smith here? Thank you. Please ask your question.
Thank you. I wanted to ask, will the Mayor call on the government to call for a ceasefire in Israel and Palestine and for more support to promote community cohesion locally?
Thank you. Mayor Woodley, will you please respond? And you have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you so much for that question. I'm sure it was painful for you to bring it here and to ask it, and you must know how loaded and emotional this room is on this topic. I barely dare speak because I feel we're in a room of bear traps and anything I say is going to upset someone. In our role here in local government, we are dedicated to our local people, Hackney people and local policy. We do not engage in foreign policy, but I do understand that Hackney residents are so deeply impacted by this conflict, and that I have to represent, as Mayor, the feelings, the strength of feeling that has come forward, and the number of times we have been asked on our position on this. So how do I begin? How do I even begin to express how we feel about the atrocities we have witnessed on 7th of October, the terror that was enacted and the deaths that occurred, all that we have seen since, the burden that is put upon our shoulders, the trauma that we have felt from older person, adult, child, all across our families. It's been unavoidable. And it is so, so distressing and really hard to actually look, you in the eye and talk about how we can bring community cohesion to that situation. We are in the midst of a really fragile truce, and we must kind of ask our political leaders to honour the meaning of a truce, what it means to really stop and pause and take care and try and put all energy into negotiations to take us to a place for a full and permanent ceasefire,
We all want this to stop, but hostages must be released. The damage that has been done must be addressed. We have to recognise the right to defend. We have to recognise that we were in a situation of ceasefire when those atrocities of 7th of October took place. And for us in local government to understand the full history and grievances and damage that has been done over the years, I think is just such a huge task. So in terms of community cohesion, you have seen statements made by our colleagues, by the Speaker, by Deputy Mayor Bramble, in her role as acting mayor, in her introductions to Cabinet, by all of us actually on the doorsteps, because we've been challenged on this, because it was polarised in the campaign in a way that felt very damaging to all of us, I think, and really hard. What we have tried to do is go and visit faith partners. We've knocked on doors, we've spoken to individuals, to residents, and tried to understand the hurt. We've heard of people who have lost family members, friends, loved ones, people they've met, journalists, doctors, care workers, both in Israel and in Palestine. And the hurt is just, you can feel it coming out of the people that we've spoken to, and it is hard to know how to hold them. I'm an elected member, I've now had to resign as an elected member in Cazenove Ward. And we pride ourselves on Cazenove Road as having all different faiths and none on one road. There's been interfaith work. Perhaps there have been challenges around how expansive it could be, who could it include, how can it be more inclusive? And I think everybody works in good faith to try and make those spaces more inclusive. And we have to find a way to come back to bringing everyone together. And I believe actually day to day that is the case, that our neighbours still are side by side and looking to one another for help and support. I do want to say that when it comes to standing up for our beliefs and our passions, we will always support peaceful protest here. We will never deny dissent. What we do have to do is ensure that we don't have victims of some of those passions. When somebody speaks and directs their kind of frustration or their anger at someone who is just not deserving of being a recipient of that anger and understandable, passionate and upset. So we have to look at how can we de-escalate, and that is not to sanitize and deny that something dreadful is going on. It's to try and bring calm and rationality and figure out how we get to a point, I hope sooner than later, where we can begin to heal. I think it's extraordinarily brave of you to come here and ask that question. It is the $60 million question, I do know that, and I really don't want to let you down in my response. I just want to recognise it. I think we all want the same thing. We want the bloodshed to stop, and we want more care and more healing, and to take care of one another in Hackney.
Thank you. In fact, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do. I would like to ask if the Mayor and the Labour group, considering the urgency of the situation, would you consider bringing the ceasefire motion on the agenda? Would you consider bringing it forward? And can I just add, humanity is not polarising. It should not be polarising.
Apologies, that question can't be answered at the time, but if you have another supplementary question, Councillor Woodley would be happy to answer that.
I don't know if I'm confused, but I don't feel like I got a clear answer. That will you call on the government to call for a ceasefire, and yes or no, please?
I'm happy to write to government to express the feelings that I've set out tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us here this evening. I will now go back to questions 6.4, 5 and 6. Just at 6.4, where the questioners have notified that they were unable to be in attendance this evening and would like their response to the questions read out. Mr. Derek Miller submitted the question 6.4. His question is, please can the Cabinet Member for Housing provide an update on the Council's response times for dealing with leaks in its council homes since its launch of a new faster service in February 2023. Can the Cabinet Member for Housing Services please respond? And you have up to 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Mr. Miller, for this very timely question. We, of course, know leaks can be extremely damaging and distressing to residents, and are one of the most common causes of damp and mould. Tackling them early can help prevent the issue spreading or potentially causing issues in neighbouring homes. Following our increased investment in services last year, this council made a commitment to everyone living in council-owned managed homes that we would redouble our efforts to tackle issues such as damp, mould and leaks. We set new targets in inspecting all reports of damp and mould within 5 working days, established a dedicated hotline in our repairs contact centre, and have continued to invest in making our repair service more equitable and efficient. Since then, the council has since made significant changes in the way it manages repairs, and we are completing 8% more repair jobs than we were a year ago, with an average of 243 jobs completed every day. In February of this year, we also committed to a new target of responding to reports of leaks by the end of the following day. We have appointed additional plumbers and supervisors through our dedicated leaks hubs team to ensure that we achieve this. In the first 6 months of this year, 87% of leaks were raised as an emergency repair, with the remaining 13% appointed outside of this time scale to meet with tenants' availability. The overall average time to attend was 1.48 days. We have recently carried out our annual tenant satisfaction survey, and I'm pleased to be able to say that we're starting to see increased resident satisfaction. Satisfaction in the time taken to complete most recent repair are up by 8%. Satisfaction in homes that are well maintained are up by 8%. The overall satisfaction in repair services is up by 5%. However, we know that this is just the start of a journey, and we will continue to work with all our residents and learn from where we get things wrong to ensure that we deliver a good and improving repair service. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. We have now come to the end of the public questions. Everyone who has not received a response will get a written response, and I would like to thank members of the public who have submitted their questions. So we move on to agenda item 7, which is questions from members of the council. The maximum time allocated for this item is 30 minutes. If you are responding to a question, a reminder that you have no more than 5 minutes, and the traffic light system is here to guide you as to when you have 1 minute remaining and when your time is up. However, please be succinct so that we can get through as many questions as possible. After 30 minutes, again, any questions not answered will receive a written response, which will also be included in the minutes of this meeting. A reminder that supplementary questions must arise out of the original question or the reply and must not be a speech or a statement. So we move to question 1 from Councillor Binny Lubbock to the Cabinet Member for Climate Change, Environment and Transport. Councillor Binny Lubbock, please ask your question.
Thank you. In light of the news we heard in the Living in Hackney Scrutiny Committee in September that the council is likely to fail to meet its 2040 retrofit target and that it could take over 4 decades to retrofit the whole stock, how does the council plan on offsetting this carbon cost to meet its Climate Action Plan's 2030 target?
Thank you. Councillor Coburn, would you please respond? You have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to Councillor Binny Lubbock for this very important question. I think the question highlights the lack of ambition we have from the government on our retrofit programme, and the rhetoric that you hear, not just from this current Prime Minister, not just he's scaled back on the promise that they put forward, which was already shortcoming. The previous Prime Minister as well, or the previous Prime Ministers, I should say, you know, it was all rhetoric, but no support for councils to deliver. What we do know, Councillor Binny Lubbock, is that councils and cities are leading the way towards our climate transition, particularly around what we're going to be doing to sort of around retrofit for our homes. For context for members in this room, Hackney's obviously housing stock is more than 50% social housing, and we've got lots of buildings, which is why the Climate Action Plan set out a strategy on how we're going to reach net zero. Our targets that we set ourselves is to reduce our own emissions on our own by 45% by 2030, and then hopefully borough-wide by 2040. But Councillor Lubbock is absolutely right. It is going to be difficult, but not by the failing of this council, but actually by the lack of support that we have from government in terms of the funding available for councils to be able to do, to deliver on it, but also from the regulatory framework that's required to deliver on the retrofit that we're going to need. And that's why, you know, plugging the Labour Party's GB Energy, which is really important, and it's hundreds of millions of pound investment to local councils to make sure that we get that transition and we can help support our residents, reduce their energy bills, create all the jobs that we need in the sector, and particularly helping support our young people around their apprenticeships, the new wave of green jobs that are going to come through, but also helping support that transition. Nevertheless, we are taking action in Hackney. We obviously rejoined and committed to UK 100's commitment and pledge around that, and we joined that last year, and that has been a positive step moving forward for us. We're also engaging with other London councils through London councils and the development of their climate action plan, low carbon development, what we're doing to reduce emissions from our buildings too. And there are lots of different forums that the council is engaging with to help reduce that. What we're also doing in Hackney is obviously helping support some of our public buildings in terms of reducing these emissions. I mentioned the Community Energy Fund. We launched the second round of it today, something that I'm very proud of that we're doing, which is helping reduce emissions from our buildings. We're going to have to get much more creative around how we can help support residents in that transition to net zero.
Is there someone that can check on the member at the back? Apologies, let's just pause for a moment, just make sure everyone's okay.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Apologies for the pause. I think it was right to just make sure everyone was okay. I think you were halfway through, yes. Please do continue.
Councillor Williams feels better. So what I was saying is that this council is taking action in our retrofit plan, and obviously we announced what we're going to be doing through the climate action plan, an implementation plan that sets out all the detailed implementation that we're going to be taking over the next 3 years to help reduce emissions from our buildings. But also it requires us to be very smart about how we can deploy resources from elsewhere. And one of the things that the council has been very successful in recent years, working with my colleague, Councillor Mackenzie, on too, is how we've been able to benefit, for example, from the social housing, government's social housing decarbonisation fund. And the reason why we were able to do that with Councillor Mackenzie was because we surveyed our council estates across the borough, understood how we can improve energy efficiency levels, and very smartly bidded for funding that we were very successful in. Recently in Frampton Park, we helped improve energy efficiency levels in 700 homes, and those are sort of schemes that we're going to be prioritising and moving forward. We're also going to be looking at our corporate buildings. That's part of what the Climate Action Plan seeks to do. It's about our own buildings, but also how we can help support businesses in that journey. And I know Deputy Mayor Nicholson has been leading and advocating on the way for how we can support our businesses, both reduce their bills and also create the new energy of jobs that we're going to need in our borough as we move forward. But thank you and welcome the question. But that's exactly why we need the Labour government to really accelerate our plans to reach net zero by 2030. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lubbock, do you have a supplementary question?
I do, yes. Thank you very much for that answer. We totally appreciate that the government is failing to provide funds and resources for this. But obviously, as we're hearing, the 2040 retrofit target is unlikely to be met. So do you actually think that you can offset that? Is that going to be possible? We appreciate all the great work that's going into, apprenticeships. That's really important. We know that there's a massive skills gap, but are we going to be able to offset the failure to meet that 2040 retrofit target? Thank you.
But look, I think what's really important to understand here is and this is one of the things sort of in this sort of the climate space, is that day by day, month by month, year by year, there's lots of new technologies that are changing, lots of new funding opportunities that may or may not be available because of the political crisis that we find ourselves in nationally. And I think it's just what's really important for the council to do is to really set out what we can do to help reduce emissions within our means and within our financial means. And that's the sort of the action that we set out in the climate action plan. But also is to prepare so that if the technology is unlocked and if the funding is unlocked through a Labour government coming in, then what we can do is we can rapidly accelerate some of the plans that Councillor Mackenzie is working on, particularly in his portfolio, to help reduce emissions from our council housing stock, but also help support our council tenants in reducing those bills as well. So my responsibility and the responsibility of the executive of the council is to make sure that the council is very much sort of prepared for that acceleration, and hopefully we'll be looking forward to achieving that. Thank you.
Thank you. Move on to question 2. Councillor Smith, please ask your question.
Still out, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Woodley, would you please respond, and you have up to 5 minutes.
So, Councillor Smith, as newly elected Mayor of Hackney, I would be more than happy to declare a commitment to Hackney being a fair trade borough, or to reconfirm. Social justice is key for fair and ethical trade, especially considering that the repercussions of climate change will impact every individual on the planet. However, we also know that not everyone will suffer to the same degree. Rapid climate change may further exacerbate the structural inequalities present in our economic systems. Fair and ethical trade is therefore necessary for climate justice. It is unacceptable for farmers and producers to bear the brunt of the costs of the climate transition alone. We can therefore ensure that through our systems and processes, support is provided to make this shift, while farmers, workers and producers receive fair prices for their products. In making this public declaration, I can commit to delivering on the manifesto pledge to remain committed to being a fair trade borough, ensuring that we're supporting sustainable trade and supporting communities around the world. And I'm a big advocate for growing communities and the work that they do in terms of bringing local produce out to residents in Hackney, using part of our parks and sharing with park users their skills and their trade, and of course working with fair trade suppliers to ensure that we're giving fair produce to everybody. So being a fair trade borough, however, is only one element, and much work is being undertaken to address climate justice issues. And as a borough, we should be encouraging and promoting business models that prioritise people and the planet over profit. We're looking at options to bring together under one banner the various ways that businesses can operate and trade more responsibly in the borough by the preparation of a responsible business charter. And I know Councillor Nixon and Councillor Palace are really invested in this work. This will help us be clear in our communications with different kinds of businesses and how we can work together to meet our social and environmental commitments in ways that supports and matches particular business models. With regard to promoting Hackney as a fair trade borough, I would like to personally thank Councillor Smith for his work and dedication as fair trade champion, as well as acknowledge his dedication and commitment, ensuring that our recommitment is fulfilled, and that the activities in the coming year are a fitting tribute to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the fair trade mark. I wonder if Councillor Smith is in line with the celebrations around this anniversary, planning to propose 30 ways to celebrate 30 years. And I look forward to seeing what you come back with.
Councillor Smith, do you have a supplementary question?
No, that was great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I look forward to the 30 actions. Question 3 from Councillor Garbett to the Cabinet Member for Housing, Services and Resident Participation. Councillor Garbett, please ask the question.
As set out, thank you.
I understand that Councillor Coburn, Cabinet Member for Climate Change, Environment and Transport, will be answering this question. Councillor Coburn, would you please respond? You have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you very much for prompting this very important question, Councillor Garbett. As you're obviously very right to allude that Hackney, but also London, we're seeing record temperatures that we've never experienced in our history, in the recent history. Certainly as a kid, I've never experienced such high temperatures. And one of the things we saw in London last year was obviously the wildfires, the fires that happened across London, something unthinkable that we've experienced. So that's exactly why, you know, I keep plugging the action plan today, but that's exactly why we're obviously a part of the climate action plan is around how we help support Hackney in that transition, particularly around our adaptation. I know Mayor Woodley in her previous role in Cabinet very passionately led our green infrastructure strategy and making sure that our streets are more resilient so we can help cool temperatures across our streets. And we obviously planted 5,000 street trees since 2018, and that was part of that plan as we move forward together with that. The actions that are set out in the implementation plan hopefully will help support our residents in those who are most vulnerable. And one of the things that we'll be looking forward to as we move forward is about how we can increase our tree canopy on our streets from 20% to 30% as they mature. And these trees will play an increasingly vital role in helping cool our streets, as I mentioned, and the positive contributions that can be made from new building developments as a result of meeting urban green factor standards that will also be of value. During these times, when temperature warnings are issued, many departments across the council and our partners work together to help support vulnerable individuals and communities during heat waves. Such measures, including providing advice on staying cool, establishing and advising on cool spaces in existing buildings and public areas, providing water to stay cool, checking on those who may be homeless, and working with partners to better ensure preparedness, but also to help support for how we can support against welfare in case it happens. Additionally, the council collaborates with climate resilience groups to strengthen the community and response to the climate action plan. By implementing the climate action plan and its associated implementation plan, the green infrastructure strategy in particular, we aim to build resilience, adopt a new climate to help adapt to climate change and protect our most vulnerable residents. The research by the University of Manchester also reiterates the lack of commitment by the government to adequately fund adaptation measures, which would help increase resilience. And we're seeing this in Hackney at the moment, where we look at, for example, the cost that it requires, particularly around the work that we're doing around our sustainable energy rate systems. These are very expensive piece of schemes and projects that are carry out. Nevertheless, as part of the £61 million climate action plan and Hackney Labour's Green New Deal, we are seeing record levels of investment in Hackney to help make sure that Hackney is resilient to combat climate change, but also helping support our residents and some of those who are most vulnerable. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Garbutt, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes. Thank you for that. It was really interesting to hear you talk about the people who obviously live in the areas and will be affected. So I just wanted to know how they're being included and if the council considers this a public health priority. Thanks.
Yeah, so two really good questions. So absolutely, and I think, you know, when we did deliver the climate action plan, one of the things that we did commit to was to say that this isn't the end of the conversation with our residents. So the way in which we envisage this climate action plan is just that it's going to be an evolving document. The implementation sets out what we're going to be doing over the 3 years, because that's what we know what we can do and what we can see in front of us in terms of technologies, but also the budget. But hopefully we want to evolve that document and make sure that we're updating it to make sure it's ambitious for the people of Hackney. And hopefully, as part of that, what we can commit to doing is making sure that we're continuing to have that conversation across our neighbourhoods in Hackney to help support those residents. And those will take forms in many different ways. So, you know, colleagues will be able to do that through their ward forums. We'll be able to do that for our scrutiny functions. Obviously, us as the climate action plan, as the sort of the council lead, we'll be looking to sort of how we can have more deliberative forms of engagement with our residents to really strengthen the climate action plan and our plans around adaptation, and really help and support our residents in relation to that. Thank you.
Thank you. We move to question 4 from Councillor Turbo Deloff to the Cabinet Member for Financing, Insourcing and Customer Care. Councillor Turbo Deloff, please ask your question.
Thank you. Muchas gracias. As we enter the winter months, the cost of living crisis continues to leave many in poverty, having a profound impact on residents' mental health. What support is the council making available for the winter months ahead to both support residents' financial circumstances and their mental health? Thank you. Gracias.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and can I thank Councillor Turbo-Deloff for her question. We're deeply concerned with the continuing impact of the cost of living crisis on many of our residents, especially as we move into the winter months. Last week, the Mayor and I wrote to the Chancellor of the Exchequer to demand adequate levels of government funding for vital council services and our residents. Since 2010, we have suffered a reduction in external funding of £150 million this year. The effect is to £150 million this year, an enormous amount. We also set out in the letter the disastrous impact of the government's failure to match housing benefit levels with real housing costs. Now, I'm pleased to say that after years of campaigning with London councils and other organisations, local housing allowance levels have finally been unfrozen. And this is a huge victory for councils, campaigners, and most importantly, thousands of private renters in Hackney and elsewhere. However, there's always a downside. As I speak, there is deep concern about the future of the household support fund. This provided us 5.6 billion last year, and the Chancellor made no mention of it in his speech. So it looks at the moment to, at best, be uncertain. The loss of this would be a disaster for the borough, and all the services that the support that we've been able to provide to residents in that money, and that is now at risk. But yet again, the government has failed to provide sustainable funding for local authorities and the vital services that our residents rely on. This means the council faces even tougher choices when setting our budget in the years ahead. Nonetheless, Hackney Council will continue to do all we can to help residents. Our Money Hub continues to help residents maximise their income and claim the benefits to which they are entitled. We are planning to meet our manifesto commitment to increase the discounts on council tax on those least able to pay. We've organised events like the Winter Warmer, which is targeted to residents over 55, and incidentally, the next one of those is set for December the 7th at Hackney Church on Lower Clapton Road from 11 o'clock to 3. So I would strongly recommend that you publicise that with your residents. And we'll promote any spaces. Our winter approaches will promote many spaces that are open for residents to warm up and have a hot meal over the coming months, which will help make sure those who need it have somewhere to shelter. In general, the council's approach to supporting residents through the cost of living crisis has been to work in more connected and preventative ways, as outlined in our poverty reduction framework. We've been actively building connections with and between our voluntary and community sector partners to strengthen the webs of support available to residents. For instance, our Tackling Poverty and Inequalities team have been running fortnightly sessions for all frontline staff in Hackney to share updates on how to work with residents who are struggling. Specifically for support in going into the winter, the council is connecting such organisations with information about what support is available around the borough. For instance, we're collecting and distributing information from community food partners on what will be available over the holiday period, knowing that many organisations will either have to close then or run limited services. The Here to Help team is also producing an updated cost of living support guide that provides information on bills, energy, money and debt, and all matters that will help people through the cost of living crisis. Funds from the Household Support Fund this year are being used to supply food and fuel vouchers to residents throughout the winter months, as well as throughout the rest of the year on the other services. We are also supporting the Hackney Food Network in running a Just Giving campaign to provide extra funds for community food organisations in January to serve residents through the winter. We see this as essential because many food network partners don't just serve meals, but also create a space for community and connection. Even with all this support, we know there will still be significant hardships throughout the winter, and that it will have profound impacts, as I said, on mental health. And the council commissions a range of services to support residents with complex health needs. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Turbo-Deloff, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, please. Thank you. Just thank you. Thank you very much. Very comprehensive. According to data, around £28 million goes unclaimed in benefits in the borough, which Money Hub has been brilliant at supporting residents, and I know the council has done a lot on it. I just wanted to hear whether there is anything else we can do to ensure that no one ever misses any more on benefits that they're duly entitled to. I know we as a council have been working hard to ensure it doesn't happen. Thank you.
Well, I wish I could make it easy, but all I can say is that we you know, it's clear that it's a problem that we're completely and very much alive to. And as you point out, the Money Hub has been hugely successful in its work in identifying people that you know, don't claim the full amount of benefits that they're entitled to. And members can help. I mean, I suspect many of you as well have come across people in our open surgeries and our surgeries that we've helped. I've referred them to the Money Hub. I mean, one of my residents, we managed to get you know, £11,000 worth of disability benefit that he was entitled to, he wasn't claimed. So we can all do have a small role to play in this, and the council continues to focus on it heavily. Not just the Money Hub, we work very closely with with voluntary organisations, Citizens Advice and others that run similar services. But I think you're quite correct to identify it as a serious problem, and you know, there's a lot of hardship for the borough, and we've got to work hard to get you know, much of the resources to these people as we can. Thank you.
Thank you. We move on to question 5 from Councillor Binny Lubbock to the Mayor. Councillor Binny Lubbock, please ask your question.
As set out, thank you.
Mayor Woodley, would you please respond?
Thank you, Councillor Binny Lubbock. I know you are really passionate about the retaining of trees, and particularly mature trees in our borough. And I'm always glad to see you reporting street tree damage, and you know, actually really appreciate the way you raise those concerns. It's really helpful, and I hope all members will remember the street trees email address. Every time you see a tree damage, your intervention means that we can get in and often rescue it, which is the great thing about trees. They're incredibly resilient. I do want to do a bit of scene setting, if you'll forgive me. I know you know a lot of this, but as Councillor Coban pointed out, after the declaration of the climate emergency, we had such an ambitious plan to add to our street trees. So we did plant over 2 years 5,000 street trees. We now have 15,000 street trees that our officers maintain, an additional 60,000 trees across our parks and green spaces. And you know that I always want to champion our tree map, where we've captured 45,000 of those trees, and it's constantly updated. And again, we welcome member input if we've got a species wrong. We've got, and the fact that we have to update it, because we actually mark for each tree whether it's young, aging, mature, etc. So as they grow, that will update as well. And as we begin to kind of use that resource, we can kind of help to educate some of our young people and actually everybody, where we want to kind of make our streets more interesting with those trees. We have such a diverse range of trees that they can learn about the different species and the benefits that they bring, the biodiversity they produce and the wildlife they support. All this to say that I recognise, as Councillor Coban's set out, that healthy trees offer numerous benefits, including air purification, noise reduction, temperature moderation, and psychological well-being, enhancing the overall quality of life of the community. But I also know people just get very attached to those trees that are in their neighbourhoods. I have a number of mature trees that have been removed, of around 38, which when you compare to that 60,000 plus 15,000 is a very small proportion indeed. Now I know that each of those trees, if they're mature, are really hard to replace. It takes a long time to replace the offer that they bring, but you know, this is proportionate, I would argue. We never want to really remove a mature tree, but sometimes if they're disease, dangerous or dying and therefore pose a risk to the public, we do have to. Also, if they've been implicated in a subsidence case, or the management of the size of the tree is not deemed an economical or effective means of reducing the effects of tree-related subsidence. We do sometimes have to acknowledge the existence of underground utilities or major changes to the immediate environment, such as adjacent development of a highway scheme, which has changed the footway and road layout. We will of course seek to replant in a suitable location nearby instead if possible, or to plant multiple trees, because we do recognise you'd need a lot of young trees to replace what is lost when you take down a mature tree. Again, I just want to be grateful and thankful to the support of all our partners and local experts who help us oversee this incredible sort of rich tree canopy that we maintain in Hackney. There are so many people, whether it's tree musketeers or experts, wildlife gardens of Haggerston, Russell Miller, that there's a long list of people that get involved and can advise us sometimes where we think a tree has to come down, and in fact they think no, it could add value even as a dead tree or as a hollowed out tree in terms of biodiversity. So we do try and retain trees in place where they are felled, or to reuse them in the best way possible. So again, thank you for your interest. You can tell I'm very passionate about trees in Hackney, even if my role has changed. I'm trying to keep parks and green infrastructure and local nature recovery plan in my brief for as long as I can. Thank you.
Councillor Binny Lubbock, do you have a supplementary question?
I do. Thank you very much for that answer. And yeah, I'm glad we share the love of trees. I just wanted to check that the 38 mature trees that we said lost, is that in the last 5 years? And how long will it take for the newly planted trees to create the equivalent carbon store for the lost trees?
Thank you. Yeah, that's what we have on record for the last 5 years. And I guess I do have to acknowledge the cyber attack, and there may be some loss there, but we did keep a lot of, I know our Rupert, our tree officer, who sadly left us, to keep an annual record. So we're pretty confident that that's correct. It does take us, a substantial number of years for those younger trees to replace, but I think the sheer quantity of those trees, I hope shows you our commitment to kind of trying to retain that overall benefit that our mature trees offer.
We do have time for just one more question. So question 7 is from Councillor Garbutt to the Deputy Cabinet Member for Private Rented Sector and Affordability. Councillor Garbutt. Councillor Walker, sorry. Apologies. I bypassed Councillor Walker, apologies. That was me leaping ahead. Question 6 from Councillor Walker to the Cabinet Member for Climate Change, Environment and Transport. Apologies. Councillor Walker, please ask your question.
As set out, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor Coburn, would you please respond?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I know Councillor Walker was very eager for this question to be asked, so I'm glad he did get his chance to ask this question. I've been working with Councillor Walker now with residents on Balls Pond Road since Councillor Walker's been elected for review. I know he's very passionate about making sure that we can get traffic reduction along Balls Pond Road, because we know that we do have an issue around congestion, particularly during the rush hours on Balls Pond Road. We also do know that there is an issue around air quality, although the levels don't exceed sort of the limits that are set out. We obviously met with residents, Councillor Walker, on Balls Pond Road. We brought officers from Street Scene to understand what their concerns are. It's a very unique road because obviously it cuts into Islington Council as well. So any intervention that takes place on Balls Pond Road has to be cross-collaborative with Islington as well. And I know that Islington has other schemes in and around the area that hopefully should help mitigate around that. What we are very committed to doing as a council is making sure that we're doing 3 things. So the first thing is around monitoring. So we want to monitor and strengthen our monitoring around traffic counters, and we've got a continuous traffic counter there to make sure that we better understand data in terms of where that flow of traffic is coming from. Not just the immediate roads, but also understanding Hackney-wide. And that's why Hackney's low traffic implementation plan is really important, because it looks at the holistic picture and understand the flow of traffic across Hackney. And that's why what we're going to be doing in Balls Pond Road is making sure that you've got the data that you need to be able to engage with your residents and make sure that we're obviously held account as residents, as politicians to that. The second thing is around monitoring around air quality. And I know that this is, again, an issue that residents do care about. We're taking lots of action across the borough, and we need to make sure that we're able to go back to our residents to say, actually, as a result of these interventions, here is what we're seeing. Is it improving? Is it getting worse? Again, similar to sort of the traffic counters, and I think we're very committed to making sure we're going to do that. The second thing that we're very much committed to doing alongside the monitoring is obviously work with Islington Council. So I've been meeting with my counterpart, Councillor Rowena Champion, in Islington, specifically on the issue of Balls Pond Road, and that's part of the conversation that we are having. One of the things that I'm happy to commit with Councillor Walker right now is to make sure that we again bring Islington, Hackney, therefore all the partners together around the table to get across a sort of a set of measures and bring about urgency that residents in and around Balls Pond Road so desperately need. Look, the final thing I would say is obviously we do see this as a priority, and we've had a lot of conversation around Balls Pond Road. We do want to take action, but what we want to do is we want to make sure we get it right for the residents of Hackney, but also we want to make sure we get it right for residents on the surrounding borough roads as well. And hopefully we can commit to making sure that we can make that happen, and look forward to working with Councillor Walker as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Walker, do you have a supplementary question?
I do, thank you. Thank you for your response, Councillor Coburn. Can I push you a little further on the issues of major roads like Balls Pond Road? Many residents, and I see some of the residents up here today, which is great to see them. They feel that these roads have become sacrificial roads in light of the implementation of the LTM programme over the past few years, and that some of their issues that they face have been ignored. Can you commit to ensuring that plans to address congestion and air pollution will include engagement with those residents? And I thank you for recommitting to working with Islington Council, but also with Transport for London, to ensuring that these issues are addressed and that the impact of these roads and the lives of the residents are addressed going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. And I didn't know there was residents today from Balls Pond Road, so welcome to all of you as well. And if I've met you before, good to see you again. Hopefully we look forward to having this conversation with Councillor Walker too. You're very lucky to have a councillor like Councillor Walker. Is very much on it, so that's great. But what I will say about main roads, and Councillor Walker, you asked a very important question around what we're going to be doing around addressing the issues on our main roads and traffic on our main roads. That's one of the things that we're going to be bringing forward for our main road strategy. It's something that we've been putting together that supplements and supports and complements our transport strategy and our transport plan, and that basically sets out how we're going to help support main roads in reducing traffic. What we've been very successful in is we set a target in Hackney, which is that we want to see traffic reduction of 15% by 2026, and that's why we've been taking action across our low traffic neighbourhood schemes, across our school streets, and all the other bits of interventions like bus priority and everything that we have been doing. But what we do recognise is obviously that we have to look at our main roads as well, and also our buses, which is why we're going to bring forward a bus strategy. What I will say, just in relation to to main roads, and that's taken nothing away from Balls Pond Road residents, is that in Hackney we've seen a 6% reduction in main roads, and actually we're one of 3 boroughs alongside Islington and the City of London that has seen a reduction of traffic in comparison to pre-pandemic levels, and that's because of the action that this council has taken to help reduce traffic in our boroughs, and I think it's something that we need to be absolutely proud of. Having said that, that doesn't mean that every single intervention we put in place is going to be right. We do understand that there are going to be some roads that are going to be disproportionately impacted, and that's why, as part of making some of these schemes permanent, what we did do is we committed to a set of new changes to filters, to redesigning some of these low traffic neighbourhood schemes, bringing in exemptions like the blue badge exemption on our bus gates as well. And those are things that we're very much committed to doing. I know the Mayor Woodley has also been out speaking to residents around these issues as well. And we're very much committed to making sure that we're an open listening council, and we want to work with residents on Balls Pond Road to bring about the change that you deserve. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have now reached the end of the 30-minute allocated time frame. Those whose questions were unable to be answered due to insufficient time will receive a written response. So we can move on to agenda item 8, the elected mayor's statement. Mayor Woodley, would you like to make your statement to the council? You have no more than 10 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to say how grateful I am to be elected into this role, and offer my respects to the other candidates who came forward, and state how thankful we all are to the electoral services team who led a smooth and transparent process. Thank you. I must add a huge thanks to Deputy Mayor Bramble for acting up as mayor and doing a fantastic job alongside our interim chief executive in ensuring Hackney Council continues to deliver for our residents during the election period. Of course, this is also down to the dedicated work of my cabinet colleagues and all of Hackney's elected councillors. Integral to our work are the over 5,000 members of staff who keep the council running, and all our community partners. Madam Speaker, if I may, I'd like to invite all members to join me in showing our appreciation to all of Hackney's officers, staff and the communities who support and challenge us. Thank you, Madam Speaker, also for your thoughtful words at the beginning of this meeting. Again, I know that many Hackney residents will have personal connections to the Middle East, and some have lost loved ones to the conflict in Israel and Palestine, and I send my deepest condolences. I must also acknowledge the terrible rise in Islamophobia, anti-Semitism and hate crime that has been reported in recent weeks. As Mayor, I am committed to working with colleagues to keep people safe here in Hackney. This is a borough where people of all faiths and none live side by side. It was this culture of inclusivity and solidarity which first attracted me to live here, and which I now seek to protect. This month is Islamophobia Awareness Month, and the council has put in place staff training and reached out to residents to consider becoming Hackney Community Hate Crime Prevention Champions or to join our Hate Crime Prevention Forum. We've also committed to work all year round to challenge prejudice. I welcome our renewed hate crime strategy, adopted at Cabinet earlier this week, and thank Councillor Vagina Thomas and officers for their dedication to community safety. Madam Speaker, in the short time since I was elected, I've already seen the great work going on in our borough. In my first week in office, I attended your We See You event, and thank you for putting that on. To see those exhibited works by children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities was really fantastic. Huge thanks to Piper, Beth, Titus, and all the other young people and community partners for participating and affording the chance to celebrate the achievements of our young people with SEND, as well as address challenges. In terms of the challenges, SEND has been a key area of focus in the work I've been doing as a Cabinet member over the last 3 years. And as Mayor, I've already written to the Secretary of State for Education to express my concerns over pressures upon services and seek further support in creating more SEND provision in Hackney that we desperately need. I know I've also sent a letter with Councillor Kennedy and Councillor Turbo Deloff around needing more support for some of our most vulnerable residents. And I thank you both for your work there. I know you've also produced a number of events around Mental Health Week and actually still have tried to attend them despite having to receive some support for your own health. And I can't believe you're actually here tonight, Councillor Turbo Deloff, so congratulations to you for continuing that programme against a triumph over adversity. I've dropped into numerous community-led events ranging from celebrating Diwali to our Black History season. I've joined colleagues in marking the Transgender Day of Remembrance, attended interfaith events and a Clapton Commons vigil. Thank you to Councillor Walker for extending that invitation. It was really a special evening. I'm acutely conscious of the challenges that our communities face. In my campaign, I pledged to drive forward better renting, housing and economic justice, a greener Hackney and a more inclusive and anti-racist borough. Last night, I joined the Rough Sleeper Count. I want to thank everyone who joined the team of officers and outreach workers in looking for those who are vulnerable and offering support wherever they can. The outreach worker we were with was absolutely fantastic in terms of approaching some of our vulnerable rough sleepers. We also discovered a minor who sort of returned home, who had been kind of seeking shelter after an argument. And it was a really, I don't know, a sort of quite a moving moment to realise how quickly you can slip from being safe and secure to being so incredibly vulnerable. And I was so grateful to the outreach workers that go out again and again, but many of you also came out last night and you're all looking very good in it, I have to say, because not many of us got home before 4 or 5 this morning. Last week, I attended the Council's Anti-Racist Partnerships Day as a part of the Council's Anti-Racist Summit series of events. I want to reaffirm our commitment to Hackney being inclusive, welcoming and kind, and thank Councillor Carol Williams and officers for sharing the work of our equalities plan with community partners. This needs to reflect the lived experience of so many who have suffered and continue to suffer racism. We started this work to recognise anti-blackness racism following the murder of George Floyd and have maintained a focus on all forms of racism, whether anti-Semitism, Islamophobia or bias towards Gypsy Roma travellers and others too often marginalised but who together form a black and global majority. On housing, in the next 12 months, we'll be on site with 585 new homes. That includes completing our Buckland and Wimborne schemes, where nearly half of the 113 new houses will be at social rent. That's just one part of our Hackney Labour commitment to build 1,000 homes for social rent across the borough. On economic justice, as a tough winter looms, I urge residents to come along to our winter warmer on 7th December to get help and advice. Our poverty reduction team and Money Hub continue to help residents get the community and financial support they might otherwise miss out on. And obviously, Councillor Chapman did speak to this earlier today, and thank you for all your work. Our repairs service has a winter target of a 24-hour turnaround for broken heating on council homes. Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie. And that's in addition to the extra support to pay council tax for planning, increasing the council tax reduction scheme discount to 90% for our residents who need it, and we're still committed to bringing that to 100% by 2030. On a greener Hackney, we have to prioritise economic and social justice as we take our climate action plan forward. And I'm keen to ensure its implementation. I did really enjoy joining Councillor Coburn on the launch of the second round of the Community Energy Fund. When you're with organisations and you know it's going to make a huge difference to their energy bills, and they're really going to embrace those solar panels or efficient kind of modes of heating, you know, that's that moment when you know in local government you can make a real difference to people's lives and organisations' operations. So really fantastic. In Hackney, we will always prioritise fairness. But I wish I could say the same of the government. As Councillor Chapman said, we wrote to the Chancellor Jeremy Hunt ahead of the autumn statement. We called on him to put council finances on a sustainable footing so we can provide the services our residents rely on, and I'm afraid to say he singularly failed to do so. Hackney faces a £57 million budget shortfall by 2027. Our officers are squeezing maximum value from every pound, but after 13 years of austerity, we are inevitably faced with really tough choices. That said, I've been blown away by the amount the council does to ensure great services for our residents. On Monday, we brought together campaigners to raise awareness of violence against women and girls, where this council is also taking action, from better lighting and CCTV to our pioneering in-house domestic abuse service, which has now helped over 1,300 people. I'm also pleased to see Hackney Youth Parliament got involved. I think you came marching through the streets of Young Hackney, and Councillor John Thomas, you just did such a fantastic job of bringing everyone together, and I think staff felt absolutely appreciated for the work they do, so thank you for that. Members of Youth Parliament attended Cabinet on Monday to set out their asks of the Council. We look forward to engaging in their upcoming debates and activities. Madam Speaker, as we approach the season of festivities, as you said, well, we can trust that Hackney Council that we'll go the extra mile to provide some light. At our Hanukkah celebration next week, the menorah candles will remind us of the values of solidarity and hope. And I'm glad you mentioned the panto and all the other festivities. It should be a fun time, and I hope we can all find some joy in this season. My thanks again to our residents for all they do. My door is always open to everyone who values Hackney as much as I do over the coming months and years. And thank you all.
Thank you very much, Mayor Woodley. Does someone from the Conservative group wish to respond? You will have no more than 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think my voice has come up simply. Excuse me. So firstly, I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate the new mayor on the election to office, and trust the mayor will bring to the post the same drive and enthusiasm to deliver the vital council services for our residents. And I recall then Councillor Woodley brought, as a member of the cross-party steering group, to the embryonic Stamford Hill AAP meetings, that is still today ploughing a way through to a final draft and to a point where hopefully a consensus may be reached on which we can all agree. So I want to congratulate my colleague Councillor Steinberg on a very credible campaign that was reflected in a 42% increase in the number of votes for Conservatives from the last mayoral by-election in 2016. Madam Speaker, I'm putting the new administration on notice, however, that our group will continue to challenge schemes that we consider not in the interest of the residents, such as school streets and LTNs, that has displaced large volumes of traffic onto adjoining roads and increased carbon emissions and further reduced air quality in the borough. Finally, Madam Speaker, the elephant not in the room, but I would be remiss me not to comment on the resignation of Philip Glanville. I don't want to touch upon the particular circumstances surrounding the unfortunate matter which formed part of John Henderson's independent review now underway. And the aspiration is, in his final report, will be brought to council in January. But I do want to put on record here my grateful thanks, although he and I disagreed fundamentally on a number of issues. But on one issue, I could be certain of his unwavering support, where anti-Semitism raised its ugly head from whatever quarter it came. Philip Glanville was front and center in the condemnation of this ancient virus of prejudice and hatred. And it will be remembered with gratitude that he campaigned tirelessly to drive out all forms of racism from this borough. And that's an impressive legacy to be remembered by. And I'm pleased that the new mayor will continue to fight the fight to ensure that Hackney remains a safe place for all. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you so much. Councillor Garbutt, do you wish to respond? You have no more than 5 minutes.
Thank you. To start, I just want to say that the violence that we're seeing in the Middle East since October the 7th and the decades before represents a total failure of politics in the region and internationally to do the difficult work of building the lasting peace that recognises the rights of all people to live in safety and dignity. The attacks by Hamas were brutal and sickening, and so were the continued attacks on the oppression of Palestine and the Palestinian people. In Hackney, we've seen some of the largest and most frequent protests in solidarity with the Palestinian people. I joined the school strike for Palestine last Friday on the town hall steps, where young people were asking why adults were killing children. They were calling for a ceasefire, and some were too upset to speak. It was an incredibly powerful show of solidarity from our Hackney children with the children of Palestine. This conflict is having a real impact on people in Hackney. We've heard about the disgraceful incidents of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, as well as people losing family members. I visited one family who've lost over 120 members of their family in Gaza, which is just absolutely heartbreaking and staggering. Last night, Councillor Binny Lubbock and I joined the Hackney Palestine Solidarity Campaign, calling for the council to divest and draw attention to the Pensions Committee postponing their deputation indefinitely. To be clear, this is about the millions of pounds the council's pension fund has invested in the human rights abuses in the occupied territories of Palestine. Last night, the committee had to move to a private setting because residents were in the gallery calling for their voices to be heard. This isn't democracy. There needs to be a space for this discussion and a plan to divest from all human rights abuses and climate crimes. We've prepared a motion this evening to call for the ceasefire, which I really hope that members on the other side of the chamber vote to be heard. We must do all we can to represent the views of residents. Residents and the history will remember how we vote this evening. And picking up on a statement from the mayor earlier on, the way we ask for political leaders to do things is by taking action in this chamber. Turning to the Mayor of Hackney by-election, we did increase our vote share by 7.5%, bringing us up to 24.5%. I want to thank everyone who voted for me and for the Green Party, putting their faith in our vision for the borough. This is a vision that we'll try and encourage the Mayor to deliver here. We've already seen what the powers of having Greens in the room, things from the Net Zero 2030 target, advertising policy, trans rights and supports for workers' rights. I would like to congratulate Mayor Woodley again. I'm really looking forward to working with you on your and supporting your ambitions to make Hackney fairer and greener. The Greens ran a hopeful campaign rooted in social justice. We heard how residents don't feel listened to, and we need to go beyond traditional consultation and respect residents as experts in their lives. We want to hear how you as Mayor will go about this, and will you be answering questions on a social media transparent forum similar to the kind of hashtag Grill Phil style Q&A. We're looking forward to working with you to benefit all residents and people around the world who are impacted by the decisions that we make here in this chamber, such as on the climate crisis, unethical investments and welcoming refugees. There are a few areas that we heard from residents and local organisations we'd like to see prioritised in your first 100 days. Housing, as you've mentioned, so exploring all options to fund buying back and building council homes and being that strong voice to government, which is it's so great to hear you've already been doing your first couple of weeks. So we can be really loud around what Hackney needs, but I'd add to that list rent controls and the end to right to buy. We'd like to see you bring forward the main road strategy. We've been hearing from residents this evening about crying for action on main roads, but we've been sad to hear that that strategy is not going to be explicit about the World Health Organization's guidance on air quality. And we'd also urge you to listen to young people and work with them to bring around community solutions to serious youth violence. I also want to highlight that COP28 starts tomorrow and that we're deep into a critical decade determining our future of this planet. And it's great to have heard the Climate Action Plan mentioned so much this evening. The council needs to call urgently.
1 minute, Councillor Garbutt.
For the total phase out of fossil fuels, and we need radical action to do that on an international stage, but locally too. So divesting our pension fund from fossil fuels, phasing out fossil fuel burning of Hackney's waste at the Edmonton incinerator, and committing to fully remove fossil-based fertilisers like glyphosate from our estate, parks and roads. You mentioned a Green New Deal in your campaign. It'd be really great to hear if there's anything new or addition that's coming through in addition to the 2022 Labour Mayor manifestos to fully appreciate the urgency of the climate crisis. And then just finally, I'd like to do a shout out to Young Hackney, who alongside Councillor Bramble, we marched from Forest Road Youth Hub to the Town Hall on Monday, adding the young people's voices to many people calling to the end of violence against women and girls. And I'd like to mark World AIDS Day on Friday. It was incredible seeing the fundraising of Positive East Red Run, raising
Thank
a
you.
$250,000. And I'd like to just wish everyone celebrating a happy Hanukkah in the next couple of weeks. Thank you.
Mayor Woodley, would you like to exercise your right of reply? You have no more than 5 minutes.
First of all, thank you so much, Councillor Levy, for your kind words. And I do believe that across this chamber that we so often all share the same values and want the same thing. We do want life to improve for our residents. And actually we need to come together at this time because it's tough. It is really tough. And we know our residents so well in each of our wards. There is a commitment from myself and our interim chief executive to come out and do walkabouts at every ward with all councillors. We want to sort of see perhaps some of the community organisations that you know are making a real difference on the ground, but also see the challenges that you face. And actually during the campaign, that was a really important part of getting out on the door, hearing from residents and witnessing, you know, spaces that needed investment, needed care, and figuring out how to perhaps have a community-led approach to do that. In terms of how we listen, we are fantastic in Hackney Council for having a variety of ways. So as councillors, we undertake raving surgeries, we hold ward forums, we have community meetings, we go out to community groups. We give so much time as councillors. I know all of you go above and beyond, actually. I don't think anybody sort of ever tries to do this as a sort of a bare minimum effort, whether it's answering casework late at night or whether it's getting out on the door and really finding out what the challenge is and what the problem is. But beyond that, we have a fantastic scrutiny commission, I think an envy of many other councils in terms of hearing really focused challenge from our own backbenchers, but also when you go out and meet with our residents and community groups and parents, organisations and children and young people as well to bring their voices in, so that we can always scrutinise and drop our defences and understand the value of critical friendship and constructive challenge and improve. In the end, absolutely every single one of us wants life to improve for our residents. We want our policies to be flexible and adaptable to major change in our borough, and we can work together to ensure that we do that. Well, I will say, I think in terms of unwavering support for anti-Semitism and for driving out racism and for marking this month of Islamophobia, is that we just have to stand firm and recognise how important it is, again, to take care of one another. And I'm so open to ideas about what the best way to find cohesion is. I worry that the struggle, the conflict, the horrors in the Middle East will continue and that we are going to continue to be overwhelmed. And I'm worried at the idea of children, you know, asking about the situation. I'm worried about the kind of the way everything is shared on social media. So how do we protect one another as well as heal? I know we have in the past, when atrocities have been committed, held vigils and come together. And as I say, it was great to have a sort of a moment with Clapton Commons, but I know there are other organisations and communities that may wish to lead on that. So I'm very open to ideas on how we can come together as councillors as well to show our support for everyone facing those difficulties. Will I do a grill fill, social media? I don't know. Twitter, now it's X, it is a bit of a hell pit, isn't it? I think definitely a surgery, definitely open to sort of meeting with people. I tended to watch Phil's responses to those, to grill Phil, and quite often it would go down rabbit holes and it was often the same questions from the same people. I'm not sure it was as democratic as we would really want. So again, open to challenge on that and to finding good ways to getting back to people. One of the advantages, I guess, of social media is that you can be very responsive and very quick. The disadvantage is that those people that need a little bit more time, need you to sit down with them, need you to unpack what their needs are, get forgotten, and you just get caught up in this very reactive sort of instant world. So I'm not sure about that, jury's out, but definitely surgeries and contact wherever I can. Yeah, finally, I think just want to say it's fantastic that we have an opportunity to hear from young people, whether it's through Youth Parliament, whether it's through young parents on young people on our governors, our board of governors at schools, whether it's through the work that we've done in engagement, particularly in the work that we've done around child-friendly places and the development of some of our, I guess, what I'd frame as community investment, developing our play areas and parks, where we've had young people from local schools, including special schools, come out and tell us what they want in the areas. And, you know, if they tell us what they need, it's much more accurate than us trying to guess and estimate what they need. So I really value that, and thank you for flagging that. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Mayor Woodley. I think half the problem is that your name doesn't rhyme as well as the previous mayor's, right? So we'll have to work on that. Agenda item 9, the composition of Cabinet and Cabinet committees, the appointment of deputy Cabinet members and the member champions, elected mayor's scheme of delegation. This report is contained within the supplementary agenda. Mayor Woodley, please introduce the report. Oh, okay. Apologies. It does say that to introduce the report. Apparently that's not needed. So can members just agree to note the contents of this report? Thank you. Agenda item 10, the Standards Committee Annual Report. I now invite Deputy Mayor Bramble to introduce the report. As the previous chair of the Standards Committee, you have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Standards Report is the annual report that's set before members, and it's from the municipal year of 2022 to 2023, and it's an overview of the commitment of that committee to promoting and maintaining the high standards of elected members in their duties. And also it's the opportunity for complaints or concerns or queries to be raised by our residents. I want to thank who was then the MO Dawn and her team for the work and support, and the councillors that sit on that commission. What I would say, Madam Speaker, is that we've seen tonight the importance of the role of elected member. It's important that we hold that role with integrity, due diligence, compassion, and love, and care, concern, and integrity. Holding space for our residents when they are angry, when they are in despair, when they are in pain, when they are in torment, and when they do not know where to go or don't have the actions or the resolves that they need. In a time like this, when there's so much going on in the world, our elected role is more important more than ever. And we as a council take that role very seriously. As elected members, we take that very seriously. And respect, common decency must be held by all. I want to thank everyone, as I said, of those councillors that sit on that commission. There were 13 complaints, Madam Speaker, none of them met the threshold, but some of the complaints or concerns from residents was maybe the response in getting back to residents in time, issues around social media. For example, if a councillor saw the need to maybe block a resident from engaging with them, those are the kind of complaints. But again, we are here to be transparent. We are here to ensure that we are open to challenge, and none of those complaints, Madam Speaker, I must say, met the threshold. And I think that's important to stress, that we're not saying that we don't want to be scrutinised, but I'm pleased to say that all of those standards were met and upheld by members in the chamber. Thank you.
I note that Councillor Suso-Runja and Councillor Rathbone wish to speak. So, yes, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bramble, for this important report and your work around it. As you know, in order to exercise conferred functions, local authorities are required to establish a standards committee. We must also have a constitution and a code of conduct. Rules and structures alone are not sufficient. They must be underpinned by an organizational culture and values, they must be underpinned by an organizational culture that values high standards and a shared understanding. Constant diligence, vigilance, effort, and leadership are needed and adhered to. This report reminds us of this framework, so thank you, Deputy Mayor Bramble. This report also reminds us of the importance of good governance and our own good behaviours. We are, after all, public servants and serve our local community. Together, we must be mindful of and respectful of each other. We are all Hackney folk, and we are stronger together. The Standard Committee steers our course in this way. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Councillor Rathbone, would you like a few moments to speak?
Well, here. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Standards in public life and in democracy in particular are absolutely key to us continuing as a civilising and maturing society. However, sometimes self-righteousness takes over. Those who are so affected begin in an ordinary democratic way to advance their cause, but after a while it starts to get out of control and goes past the usual democratic discussion phase into name-calling, shaming, and unfortunately violence of some kind. Unfortunately, social media, usually Twitter, can be used to carry this out as well. Hatred takes over. We stop seeing one another as human beings together, and hatred blinds people as to how far they are going over the red line of standards to achieve their self-righteous cause. Last night, the Pensions Committee was disrupted, causing the meeting to take place elsewhere. It's an example of people thinking their self-righteousness of their cause overrides the fact that they are subverting the very democratic values of discussion and debate they purport to hold. Also, that preventing poor and vulnerable residents from accessing their MP is somehow advancing their cause. It is not and never can. And also encouraging school strikes. As councillors, we should remember that we need to set an example to the public, and particularly to young people and children. We should be doing our best to strive for the best standards. We are responsible as custodians of democracy, and no matter that our colleagues in Parliament and elsewhere may let us down, it's even more reason to show that those who elect us, that we are responsible people moving in a democratic way. We are not just some kind of glorified community activist. We do not operate through protests. We are people democratically elected by residents to responsibly run their local services and to improve life of people in the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rathbone. Councillor Binny Lubbock.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to know that the Chair's forward, I wonder if it could be amended. It says, it remains a matter of personal regret. The opposition group has continued their decision not taking up its place on the Standards Committee in 2022-23. So I'm wondering if this could be corrected to indicate that it's the majority opposition group that you're referring to rather than us as well, because we recognise the council's rules around proportionality, and that would mean the Green Group can't fill those seats, but we, as much as we would like to. And the other point that I would just like to raise is that of the 13 complaints for standards against the council, none met the threshold of investigation. That's very good to hear. But I just want to check because one of those was listed as being for transphobia, and it makes me wonder whether transphobia is adequately covered in the draft equalities plan, which includes supporting trans rights, but is that really the same as tackling transphobia? Surely both of those are needed as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Bramble, if you'd like to respond.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to thank Councillor Moran, Councillor Lynch, Glacier, Ete, Billington, Belford, Councillor Troughton, who's the Vice Chair, and Councillor Rathbone, who was previously on that board. In terms of the correction in the report, it does say the vacancy is the Conservative group, so it does make it clear there. But I'm sure that we could expand that, because I know that you're keen around engagement, and we still encourage the opposition majority group to take up that post, because it is very important. In terms of the threshold, if I can just reiterate, it's not a lack of understanding. or ill thought out approaches by officers, the independent person, or the process why it didn't meet the threshold. It didn't meet the threshold because of the evidence that would have been submitted at the time. So just to reassure you, it is the lack of understanding or awareness around transphobia. So just to give you that reassurance. I think you can see the strength of feeling here, Madam Speaker, in terms of being elected representatives. This is a time more than ever that we stand for our communities, but also, you know, I used to be a primary school, Madam Speaker. There's always a little bit of a Mary Poppins and a sunshine in my outlook, but sometimes being an elected member is making difficult decisions. Sometimes, Madam Speaker, it means that you are unpopular because you are trying to do things for the greater good. Sometimes, Madam Speaker, you become unpopular because actually you understand that you do not sit here as an individual, but as a representative of the whole of your community. And sometimes that's very difficult because sometimes you are not popular, but we are not elected on popularity, Madam Speaker. We are elected here as a representative, and we must hold integrity, we must be decisive, and we must ensure we do that with compassion, integrity, and holding our communities at the heart of what we do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for your contribution on this really important topic. I think there were some very strong themes that were brought out. So thank you everyone for your contributions. We're going to move on to agenda item 11, the Statutory Chief Officer Extension. Just to say that Dawn Cartner-MacDonald, the Interim Chief Executive, and Louise Humphreys, Acting Monitor Officer, would like to declare interest in respect of this item. You have before you a report from the Director of Human Resources and Organisational Development relating to the extension of the roles of the Interim Chief Executive and Acting Director of Legal, Democratic and Electoral Services and Monitoring Officer. Can members agree to note the appointment subcommittee's decision that the roles of Dawn Cartner-MacDonald, Interim Chief Executive, and Louise Humphreys, Acting Director of Legal, Democratic and Electoral Services and Monitoring Officer, are extended for a further 6-month period from the 1st of February to the 31st of July 2024.
Noted.
Thank you. We move on to agenda item 12, appointment to committees and commissions. Can members agree the appointments and membership changes to committees and the Children and Young People's Scrutiny Commission as set out paragraph 1.3 of this report? Thank you. We then move on to the next part of tonight, which is the motions. 5 motions are listed on the agenda for consideration this evening. A reminder that any motion that has not been debated shall stand referred without discussion to the next ordinary meeting of full council, and that they will be listed at the relevant agenda item in the order received. Can I ask all those making speeches and contributing to the debate to be succinct in their comments, and in accordance with Council Procedure Rule 16.4, the total time for consideration of motions shall not exceed 30 minutes. We move to 13A then, the call for an independent investigation following the resignation of Mayor of Hackney. Councillor Binny Lubbock.
Hello, I'd like to move a procedural motion to bring the motion, the Green motion, the crisis in Israel and Palestine, call for a ceasefire, release of all hostages and more support for local community cohesion to first place in the queue. I'm sure we all agree this is the most pressing matter on the agenda right now. We know from the number of people attending and the frequency of marches in Hackney how important this is to our residents. Diane Abbott yesterday cited receiving 11,000 letters about the conflict. Residents want their local representatives to be acting on this issue and doing all we can to raise their voices. We have a duty of responsibility. The ceasefire is the first step towards a lasting peace that would be deeply appreciated here in Hackney.
I believe the motion needs to be seconded. Thank you. And we now move to a vote. Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm just registering that we are against that. We are opposing to that. We are opposing to the motion that just
You're
proposed.
opposing to the motion. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
So I second that as well.
Okay. We still need to go to a vote. So those in favour of the motion being brought forward, that 8? Wow. 8.
Those against?
Those against?
That's many, the motion is lost.
The motion is lost. Thank you.
Order. Abstentions.
Apologies. Were there any abstentions? Apologies. 2. 2 abstentions. Thank you. 3.
It's not a recorded vote, isn't it?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me. We then move on to motion 13A, call for an independent investigation following the resignation of the Mayor of Hackney. Councillor Binny Lubbock.
Apologies, I'd like to move a different procedural motion, which would be for the Green Group to withdraw motions A through D, so that we could get straight on to the last one.
A, so A, B, C,
And D.
Sorry, yes, and E. So let me just make sure, not the last one.
E, no, A.
Sorry,
A
A to
through
D.
C.
A, B, C, D. And
Do you need me to explain?
Yes. Apologies, because this is quite a specific one, we're going to have some help in explaining the next steps.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So the Constitution provides that the proposer of a motion may propose to this meeting that it be withdrawn, but it has to be the proposer of the individual motion. So it cannot be an en masse motion of A through to D, unless, Councillor Garbett, where you have proposed the motion, you are similarly requesting that the motions be withdrawn. So if we could have that clarification first.
Yeah, I am, yeah.
Thank you. And then the seconder of each motion has to acknowledge and consent to the withdrawal. So are you both consenting where you are the seconder?
agreed, yes.
Agreed.
Thank you. Now it is a matter for the meeting to indicate whether they consent to the withdrawal of the meeting, of the motion. I suggest that what we do, as we have done before, is to take a vote where the council votes to agree to the withdrawal. So you vote for, against or abstain to the motions being withdrawn.
Thank you.
Councillor Rathbone had his hand up first, just briefly. So, Councillor Adams.
Yes, we are opposing that move. Yes. We are opposing it.
Can we not call out from the gallery, please? I would like to get through all the meeting's information.
I suggest we do it individually, just to be absolutely.
Okay, and what we're going to do is do it individually
Yes,
so that we're.
I second that, Madam Speaker.
Thank you.
Can I just say, I don't think it's appropriate for Councillor Adams or Councillor Rathbone to be speaking to this motion, because it's not for, I don't believe that the meeting should be debating it. So unless you have a procedural motion, I don't think you should be interrupting. Thank you.
Okay, so the vote is that we move to 15E, A.
Withdraw. So let's do this individually. So we can.
Yeah.
So with Madam Speaker's permission, in respect of motion 15A, there is a motion to withdraw. 13A, sorry, 13A, there is a motion to withdraw. Can members indicate if they wish to vote for that motion to withdraw?
Point of order. This is just getting very complex. What about the fact is that the Labour group have also made amendments to each of these motions? How is that going to be considered? Please make a ruling on that as well. Thank you.
So let's let the process proceed, and then that will be what happens.
Well, if the meeting votes that. So we have a motion before you to withdraw. Motion for debate 13A. Please can members indicate if they wish to vote for the motion
Sorry,
to
Madam
withdraw.
Speaker, what about my point? You haven't answered my point. Please answer it.
Madam Speaker, it is a matter for members of this chamber in accordance with the Constitution whether they wish to agree a motion to withdraw a substantive debate motion. It is not a matter for effectively individual members or collectively to oppose or otherwise. There needs to be a vote on this matter to accord with the Council's Constitution. If the will of the meeting is that they do not wish these motions to be withdrawn, then they will be the subject of debate and amendments can be put.
Thank you.
So, again, in respect of 13A, there is a motion to withdraw it. Can members indicate if they wish to vote for the motion to withdraw?
2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
9, I believe.
7, 8, 9, 9. That's not
7, 8,
That's not
and
enough.
again. And those against?
Okay, so
That
we
is
have
many.
debate.
And for clarity, any abstentions?
One.
So that motion has been lost. We will come to debate 13A in a moment. In respect of 13B, the same process. The motion is to withdraw. Those in favour? Few more. 10.
10.
Those against? Many.
Many. Any
Abstentions?
1.
Thank you. In respect of 13C, those for withdrawal. Those against? Clearly many. Abstentions? 1. And finally, in respect of motion 13D, those in favour of its withdrawal. 11. Those against? Any? And any abstentions? Thank you, Madam Speaker. All the motions remain for debate this evening. Motions 13A through to 13D, to be followed then by 13E.
So we will move on to motion 13A, calling for an independent investigation following the resignation of the Mayor of Hackney. Proposer is Councillor Garbett and the seconder is Councillor Binny Lubbock. I understand that no amendments to this motion have been received. Councillor Garbett and Councillor Binny Lubbock, please raise your hands to indicate that you are proposing and seconding the motion. Thank you. Councillor Binny Lubbock, can you confirm whether you wish to speak after Councillor Garbett introduces the motion or reserve your right to speak later?
Reserve my right to speak.
Thank you. Councillor Garbett, please introduce your motion. You have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you. Although I'm really disappointed that we're not hearing motion 13E, it was good to see everyone's support for this motion and hearing it this evening. So that's really good. So thank you for supporting this. So firstly, we'd like to acknowledge the ongoing distress around this case and believe that truth and transparency will help bring closure and restore faith. Since Mr. Dewey's charges were made public this year, we've called for an independent investigation. On July the 3rd, I stated that Tom Dewey's resignation less than 2 weeks after being elected in May last year was no statement from him or the Hackney Labour to explain why. We've now learned from media reporting that he was arrested in April 22 before the council elections and has now been charged with serious offences. Continued from my statement from July, we recognise that the charges are subject to court proceedings and we won't comment on those. However, an independent inquiry is needed to establish what the Mayor, councillors and Hackney Labour knew about the circumstances surrounding Dewey's resignation and the fact of his arrest. The Green Group will continue to press for full transparency from Hackney Labour and the council administration, and this is exactly what we have been doing. We had hoped this motion had been heard in May. You'll remember that we called for this to be voted up the agenda. I know that feels a bit like what we've just had again, and for us to move through the motions on the agenda quickly, but those motions were respectively blocked and denied. Given that we've been calling for an independent investigation since July, it was great to receive the email about the independent review commissioned by the council on the day of full council meeting in September, where the first version of this motion was published on the agenda. And we thank council officers involved in organising this and for the independent reviewer's work so far. We've amended the motion to reflect the gap we feel there still is in the independent review. The independent review will not look at how the Labour Party, including all its elected representatives in Hackney, knew and what they did with the information that they had. The motion has a simple ask for the council to write to the chair of Hackney Labour Party to call for them to hold an independent investigation into who knew what when and what actions they took following the raid on Mr. Dewey's home by the NCA in the Labour Party. We want reassurance that Hackney's elected representatives and party officials have acted in line with the principles of public life. Without this, a void has been created in which residents, staff and the wider community have left without answers, damaging credibility and trust. As lot has happened since we presented this motion in September, include the election of our new mayor. But residents still have questions, and this is the time for the new mayor and councillors to do the right thing, to show leadership and to be fully transparent so we can learn from this situation. Please vote in support of this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm moving a motion without notice in accordance with the Council Procedure Rule 15.1D. I would like to move that this matter be referred to monitoring officer on the ground that independent governance review is underway, and I know that several members have been spoken to by the investigator as part of that process. I therefore believe that the monitoring officer should consider whether this motion should be the subject of a debate once this outcome of the review is known and has been presented to the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Do we have a seconder?
I second that.
Thank you. We will now put this to the vote, please. All those in favour? Oh, apologies, Councillor Binny Lubbock.
Do I get my right to speak now before this motion goes through, or will that be reserved until after?
This is a motion without notice. This takes priority.
Because it's a motion without notice, it takes priority. Thank you for clarifying. All those in favour, please raise your hand and indicate for the motion. For Councillor Adams's motion. Yes, apologies. For Councillor Adams' motion, thank you. All those against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Motion is carried. So that will now be sent forward, referred on. 13B. We now move on to 13B. The motion including a ban on high carbon advertising in the council's advertising and sponsorship policy. Proposer Councillor Binny Lubbock, seconder Councillor Garbett. Amendments to this motion have been received from the Labour Group as contained within the table papers circulated. As I understand, none of these amendments have been accepted by the Green Party. Councillor Binny Lubbock and Councillor Garbett, please raise your hand to indicate you are proposing and seconding the motion. Thank you. Councillor Garbett, can you confirm whether you wish to speak after Councillor Binny Lubbock introduces the motion or reserve your right to speak later?
Reserve my right to speak, thanks.
Councillor Binny Lubbock, please introduce your motion and you have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. At the recent Green Party conference that we had in Brighton, a motion was put to the conference to introduce legislation at national level to ban high carbon advertising. I think we're all in this room acutely aware of the massive danger of climate change that we're facing. And one of the main issues that comes from this is the promotion of consumption and the consumption of high carbon products. If we are supporting that as a council by allowing our advertising spaces to be used to promote things like SUVs, flights, other high carbon products, fossil fuels of all kinds, then we are going against the future. We really need to make sure that we're not encouraging these kinds of products. We need to be encouraging a lot more green and sustainable modes of transport, products for consumption, and the council has been doing some great work on that. I personally would like to see more done on the plant-based diets, which I think, as reports after report has told us, is a massive part of the issue. And it's good to see that the council, following lobbying from groups like Adblock Hackney, as I said, I'm a member, brought in a advertising policy for the sites that they are in charge of. They brought in advertising policy that covered things like junk food. A lot of that junk food will be meat products, which have a very, very high carbon footprint. And Councillor Coban mentioned that fossil fuels are one of the things that we should be campaigning against. And the animal agriculture is a massive fossil fuel consumer. So I think that's really good that we've got that ban in place on junk food, but more broadly, we need to think about that as a fossil fuel industry. It also banned things like knife products that promote weaponry and knives, things like that. Also risky financial products, payday lenders, some really important things that we shouldn't be promoting to the people of Hackney on our sites. Unfortunately, we don't have control over all of the advertising sites in Hackney, which is why I'd encourage everyone to keep an eye on the planning portal and object against advertising sites that commercial ventures are trying to put in across our borough. I mean, I'm quite sickened every day when I come to the council here and I see the beautiful advertising space that Hackney Empire has being used to promote an iPhone. Why can't that be used to promote the pantomime as it was originally intended? iPhones and all of these other products, they are very carbon intensive. They are, using, resources that are hard to reach and sometimes come from conflict regions. So I think this is a very small thing that we can do to improve a policy, which is a good policy, and I'm very pleased to see was brought into place last year. I would like to see that policy being enforced. I'm quite glad to see that the advertising sites that the Hackney Council and Clear Channel advertising have been applying for across Hackney are getting rejected out of hand because they don't align with our planning policy. So obviously this is going to have a smaller impact, but that's good because we want advertising to have a smaller negative impact in our communities and on our residents. So I would encourage everyone please to vote for this motion as it currently stands. Thank you.
Thank you. As mentioned previously, we also have amendments proposed by Councillor Kennedy and seconded by Councillor Potter. Councillor Kennedy and Councillor Potter, please can you raise your hands to confirm that you wish to propose and second these amendments? Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Kennedy, do you wish to explain your proposed amendments?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And my thanks also to Councillor Rathbone and Councillor Nicholson for help with wording this, and for Councillor Coburn for some of the focus. Absolutely, Councillor Binney-Lubbock is right. We have an advertising policy. It already references the law, the expectations of the Advertising Standards Authority and local authority guidance. We're amending rather than opposing because obviously we support the principle of including controls over the types of advertising that go counter to our policies and our principles, and that includes any advertising that goes counter to the Climate Action Plan. Councillor Binney-Lubbock already took you through the various types of advertising that we won't support. I think you mentioned all of them. Did you mention the unproven health and weight loss products we won't support? I don't think you mentioned that. We won't support advertising for cosmetic surgery either. I think you managed to cover all the others. Look, we're already one of the leading councils in the country on climate action, sustainable transport, community energy, EV charging. Obviously we want to support that in this policy. There's a slight fault, Madam Speaker, and my apologies to the monitoring officer. I said add at Roman numeral 9. I was working from the old policy. We have a Roman numeral 9. I mean add at Roman numeral 10, please. And what we want to add at Roman numeral 10 is very simple. A clause not supporting advertising that, and I quote, could promote goods or services that contradict the council's action plan, for example, by encouraging the use of fossil fuels. We've cut out most of the references to other councils in the original motion, the references to pressure groups, of which Councillor Binny Lubbock has acknowledged he is a member, for example. Our wording focuses simply on the climate action plan and the single stat about consumption emissions. And that crystallises why we're doing this extra wording. It's a much simpler motion, therefore, strips out that sort of like wordy invocation that we as a local authority somehow have some great power over advertising that people see in this borough. Passing this motion is going to make absolutely no difference whatsoever to that Hackney Empire's ability, for example, to have that advertising on their building. We don't have a great power to control advertising. The vast majority of most of the adverts our citizens will see will be on their electronic devices, they'll be on buses, be on the sides of buildings like the Empire, on telephone boxes, on scaffolding coverings. They're all beyond our control. If we're too prescriptive on the small amounts of sites that we own, advertisers would simply go elsewhere. So it's simple wording, there's a simple policy behind it that will ask very basic questions about why people might object to the types of advertising. We do have to be careful with our fossil fuel companies. Look, only this week, a plane flew across the Atlantic on biofuel. There are, if an oil company is promoting, for example, electric vehicle charging sites, which are all being supplied on sustainable power, we need to be very careful about whether we're stopping them advertising the fact that you can plug your electric car in it's going to be up to 8,000 different places in the London Borough of Hackney. That we would support, but it might be by a company that some people might say we shouldn't be. We have to also be careful for our own gas suppliers at Hackney. So there are nuances to all this. So if there's a public or member complaint on an advert about high carbon, the complaint letter would have to have a clear reason why they believe it's in breach of the policy, and would have to be accompanied by vetted data from independent sources, not from pressure groups, or it would have to reference a breach in the Advertising Standards Authority guidance. So in general, it's about recognising that we don't have as much control as we'd like to have, and also we do recognise in the policy, and we will state it, Madam Speaker, that due to the time needed to address complaints, all the complaints will be looked at retrospectively. So this would mean that us or any media partners we have simply wouldn't advertise the same advert or similar adverts in the future, rather than going and stripping something out now. And with all those considerations, as I say, and those nuances, I propose this amendment, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. Do members wish to debate the amendments or move directly to vote on these amendments? In which case, can I call on Councillor Potter? Yes, I've not forgotten you.
I support the reasons laid out by Councillor Kenny in amending this motion, and the principle that adding a clause which considers advertisements that contradict our climate action plan. This approach, I believe, simply will enable advertisements to be considered in a measured and effective manner in the whole, and kind of strengthen our work in this area. On that basis, I support the amendment.
I now put the amendments to the vote. Unless any members have an objection, I intend to deal with all the proposed amendments en masse. Those in favour of the amendments? Thank you. Those against? Any abstentions? So the amendments are carried. Thank you. Councillor?
Yeah, we now go on to...
We will now proceed to the consideration of the substantive motion. Do members wish to debate the motion? No, I don't. I see no one that does. So Councillor Garbett, please take your time now.
Thank you. I just wanted to highlight that this is happening, in places around Europe. We've seen Amsterdam making great progress, as well as France, and I think it is important to note the councils like Cambridge, Basingstoke, typo, and Coventry. Also, Sean Berry on City, at the City Hall has been really pushing for the decarbonisation of TfL advertising, so this will put us in line with all of those efforts happening. It's also adding to what you were saying, our opportunity to really show leadership and our commitment to this. And I do like the other things that we're doing, because I really think it speaks to our values of community wealth building and making sure that we're not seeing large companies extracting profits from our communities and keeping that wealth locally and using all the tools possible to minimise climate damage. Generally, sustainable measures by fossil fuel companies represent a very small percentage of their overall work, but represents a larger proportion of their advertising budgets. It's great. I know that we've just passed your amendments, and it's great to, and I do still hope that people support this motion amended, because it will be really good to have this change and to see it monitored so we can really see the impact. So thank you.
The motion will now be put to the vote. Members are to vote for, against, or abstain. So, Councillor Adams.
Thank you. So the motion that's going to be put to the vote is as amended, is that right?
As amended, absolutely, yes.
Thank you, just for clarification.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, so it's the motion as amended will now be put to the vote. Those in favour? Thank you. Those against? Any abstentions? 2. Thank you. I declare that the motion is carried. Thank you very much. I've just been informed that we have 2 minutes left of the 30 minutes allocated time for motions. Would anyone want to propose an extension of the meeting?
Madam Speaker, I think we just stick to that 30 minutes because Councillor Lubbock wanted to go Mali by actually trying to delete all his or withdraw all his motions. So we stick to that 30 minutes rules. Thank you.
So that's not voting to extend the meeting. Does anyone wish to propose?
Sorry, can I just clarify what we're voting on? I thought there wasn't, I think you could only have 30 minutes on motions.
You can vote.
And we don't need to extend the meeting because it's not 10 o'clock.
Yes.
Madam Speaker, if I can explain, members will recall that in the new edition of the Constitution, members wanted the option of being able to extend the 30-minute period that was allocated at each council meeting for the debate of motions. Now, that matter is entirely for members at the meeting to decide. So if you wish to extend the 30 minutes, you can do so. The 30 minutes can be extended by any time frame that you want to, whether by reference to the terminal 10 o'clock hour or any earlier provision. But it is a matter for members whether they want to extend the period for debate on motions or whether they wish to conclude now as we've reached the 30-minute point.
So again, would members like to extend the time for motions? Councillor Adams.
No, Madam Speaker. Like I said, Councillor Lubbock wanted to go Mali. His dinner is getting cold, so
I think that's slanderous. He hasn't said he wants to go home early. I think that's slanderous, and you need to.
Okay. Would any members like to extend? No. Okay, thank you very much. So that is an end of the motions. Thank you very much. Just to clarify again, we've now reached the end of the 30 minutes, and as previously advised, any formal motion not debated shall stand referred without discussion to the next ordinary meeting of full council for discussion. Motions will be listed at the relevant agenda item. We have now come to the end of the agenda, and I declare this meeting closed. You are all welcome to join me in the Speaker's Parlour for refreshments. Thank you very much.
Please be upstanding if you're able for the Speaker of the London Borough of Hackney.